Nailing the waiver wire each and every week is a difference between you being a playoff team and a championship winning team. In today's video, we're looking at week 3 waivers. I'll have more than 15 names for you to consider, and we will talk about them in order of preference. Let's start with guys that should already be rostered. You can stop and look at this graphic if you'd like. Most of these names were talked about either last week on the waiver wire, so they should already be rostered, or they were guys that were drafted and broke out. Okay. Here's what I want to do. There are a lot of injuries at the time of recording this, and we don't know how severe they are, and that could drastically change waiver wire. So let's start with if Isaiah Pacheco is seriously injured. If Isaiah Pacheco is going to go on the IR, or he's going to miss 4, 6, 7, 8 weeks, then the number one pickup for me this week would be Carson Steele. And you could also consider Samaje Perine, but Carson Steele would be my number one pickup if Isaiah Pacheco is going to miss a significant amount of time. He's available literally everywhere, so that's the good news. Here's the thing with Pacheco. Jeff Darlington over on Twitter posted this just after the game. He said, in a not so great update, Pacheco is leaving the stadium on crutches and in a walking boot, and obviously testing will come on Monday. And then Jesse Newell quote tweeted that and said, Pacheco was emotional in the locker room, towel over his head with watery eyes. Andy Reid came over to wrap his arm around him before his own podium interview. Pacheco was still walking in the locker room, so we'll see what testing show tomorrow. So look, if this is very serious and Pacheco goes on IR, then you have got to get a piece of this backfield. I definitely prefer Carson Steele. He had 7 carries. Samaje had 0. And Perine only played 4 snaps for the first 58 minutes of this game. And then, of course, Isaiah Pacheco went down. So we are definitely going to splash the cash on Carson Steele. Again, if Isaiah Pacheco is set to miss a significant amount of time, let's say he goes on IR. The other injury that we are currently monitoring is the Kupp injury. And again, I don't know the status at the time of recording this, but if Kupp were to go on IR, for example, he's going to miss 4 to 6 weeks, whatever the case may be, then I would also go really hard after these Rams wide receivers. Now, beat writers in Los Angeles reported that he was in a walking boot himself, dealing with an ankle injury. So we'll find out more. You'll probably know by the time you're watching this. But you got to get some of these Rams wide receivers if Kupp misses time. Demarcus Robinson is my preference. He kind of filled that Puka Nacua role. Jordan Whittington is actually the next name I would prefer of this wide receiver room. Jordan Whittington played every single snap in the second half after Kupp went down, and he pretty much filled the Kupp role for this team. And the reason I'm interested in him is because he is a young rookie that has this untapped ceiling, untapped potential, and that really interests me, especially in a McVay offense. The same offense that last year let Puka Nacua become a superstar. Definitely want some Jordan Whittington on my team if this is a serious injury. You can also consider Tutu Atwell and Tyler Johnson, but again, you can see the targets were very well spread out. Jordan Whittington's role doesn't look as big as it actually is because, again, he played every snap after Kupp left in the second half. So look, I would spend any amounts of fab depending on how significant this injury is for Kupp. Let's say he's out for the year. I might spend 30 to 40% of my fab on Jordan Whittington in that case. So again, this is all play it by ear, but I thought because I don't know the severity of injuries yet, I'll give you that heads up. Okay, so now removing the unknowns of injuries, let's go through my top 10 here, which would be number 1, Quentin Johnston. I can't believe I'm saying that. He's available literally everywhere. Hey, we should give a big shout out to my co-host, Daniel Badaki, who has been loving Quentin Johnston for years and has been getting trashed on it. Big shout out to you, man. This is finally your time. Your guy, Quentin Johnston, was by far the wide receiver 1 in week 2. He led the Chargers in snaps, routes run, and targets. He had a 32% target share, 5 receptions for 51 yards and 2 touchdowns. 5 receptions might not sound like a lot, but guys, keep in mind, this team only had to throw the ball 19 times versus the Carolina Panthers. So that was actually pretty impressive when you think about a 32% target share, playing well above Josh Palmer. So it looks like he's actually solidifying himself. So at the moment, I'm willing to spend about 15 to 20% of my fab if you're in a fab league. Depending on how desperate you are for a flex, you can decide if you'd like to spend a little bit more. All right, the second name we're going to talk about here is Braylon Allen. Let's be honest, guys. Every week, the defense that is facing the Jets are focused on 2 names, and all they want to do is stop these 2 names. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. There's a real shot that Braylon Allen has a chance to have a significant role in this team. They need another playmaker to step up. And by the way, we have seen two running backs be relevant in an Aaron Rodgers offense before. Think about it. A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. Think about it. Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. I'm personally getting major A.J. Dillon vibes from Braylon Allen here in New York, which is supposed to be a compliment because back in the day, A.J. Dillon was actually a pretty good fantasy asset. And guys, think about this. In a neutral game script versus the Titans, Braylon Allen had a 35% snap rate. He had 7 carries to Breece Hall's 14. He had 4 targets to Breece Hall's 8. And he ran 12 routes, which is important because Braylon Allen, as a prospect, there was no reason to believe he could be relevant through the air. But he is showing that already in the NFL that he can. He was already an extremely valuable handcuff. And now he has a chance to create standalone value. I think I would spend about 15 to 20% of my fab. I wouldn't go much higher than 15% just because you can't start him without a Breece Hall injury at this time. But of course, he could develop a bigger role. Again, think Jamal Williams, A.J. Dillon, like we saw in Green Bay. All right, number 3 is Jalen Tolbert. Could the Jalen Tolbert breakout actually be here? We have been waiting years for him to fill this Michael Gallup role, and maybe he's finally done it. In week 2, guys, he led the Cowboys with an 86% snap rate. He had 41 out of 46 routes run. That's the most of any wide receiver. And he had 8 targets, over a 20% target share in a Cowboys offense. That is very enticing in my opinion. And there's a chance that he could overtake Brandon Cooks as a wide receiver 2 for this team. If this is a sign of things to come, then he could be a legitimate flex in future weeks. I mean, if we really break it down, they were similar in snaps, they were similar in routes run, but Dak Prescott decided to throw the ball to Jalen Tolbert more than he decided to throw the ball to Brandon Cooks. So if you can be a wide receiver 2 attached to Dak Prescott, that is absolutely interesting to me. I'd spend about 15 to 20% of my fab on him. Again, how desperate are you for a flex? I think the big 3 today are the 3 that I just mentioned. Okay, do you need a tight end? Because we can look towards Hunter Henry this week. So we finally got to see what the Patriots offense would look like when they needed to throw the football. Remember, in week 1, this team did not need to throw the football at all because the Bengals could not score to save their lives. In week 2, that was different. The game script was different. The Seahawks were able to score on them. And this was a more accurate representation, in my opinion, of what the Patriots offense will look like moving forward. Hunter Henry led this team in snaps with 57, in routes run with 28, and in targets with 10. Guys, there were only 21 targets to be had, and he had 10 of them. That's almost a 50% target rate, which is absolutely crazy, especially considering how many of you guys desperately need a tight end. Why not stash him and see if this is some sort of consistency moving forward? I'd spend about 10 to 15% of my fab on him. All right, my number 5 priority is Alec Pierce. Look, I'm not going to lie, guys. I should be all in on Alec Pierce, but I'm just not. Let's play a little good cop, bad cop. Let's talk about the good cop first. Okay, led the team in snaps, routes run, and targets. Outsnapped Michael Pittman, ran more routes than Michael Pittman, and had 1 more target than Michael Pittman. He also had back-to-back weeks with a touchdown and back-to-back weeks with at least 16 PPR points. That's all great, but let's play bad cop for a second. Number 1, Adonai Mitchell is very good, and he's probably going to compete for snaps with Alec Pierce. Number 2, Josh Downs has not played yet. He is going to play probably in week 3, and he's going to take a lot of opportunities away from the rest of the guys in this wide receiver room. Remember, guys, Josh Downs had 900 receiving yards as a rookie, and he was heavily targeted. They're going to use Josh Downs. Number 3, Anthony Richardson is extremely inaccurate. We're talking about a quarterback that is likely to complete 50% of his passes every single week. How reliable can that really be for your wide receiver? And the last thing I'll say is we have seen Alec Pierce in the NFL for multiple years. He has never consistently produced. I just don't see why this would be the year that he all of a sudden does, but he has been. Again, I'd spend 5 to 10% of my fab, but I'm not so sure that this isn't fool's gold when you think about the entire season. All right, my 6th pickup is Andre Yeshivis. I actually talked to you guys about him in the stash video we did before week 1. We love Yoshi. He's a great stash. He's a decent player. However, if I'm honest, this game did not tell me that any of you should go splash cash. Be very careful with how much you spend on Andre Yeshivis. Yes, he had 2 touchdowns this week. However, he only had 3 targets. That's just not something that you can rely on week in and week out. There's just no consistency there. Yes, he made some great plays. Yes, he was targeted in the end zone. but I just don't see how you can rely on that moving forward. And by the way, T. Higgins wasn't even in this game. What happens when T. Higgins is back? If you're only getting 3 targets without T. Higgins, how big of a focal point will you be when he is healthy? So again, I'm just not willing to splash a bunch of cash on a guy like Andre Yeshivas. Number 7, this is a sneaky ad if you need a running back, Deonta Foreman. Unfortunately for any Jerome Ford owners out there, this is not a workhorse situation for Jerome Ford. This is a true split backfield. At least that's what we were shown in week 2. Deonta Foreman played 27 snaps compared to 32 for Jerome Ford. Very even. And Deonta Foreman led the team on early down work, and he also led the team with goal line touches. He had 2 goal line opportunities. Jerome Ford had 0. That is very concerning for Jerome Ford moving forward. And Deonta Foreman also out-touched Ford 15-9 in this game. A game that, was relatively neutral game script. So ultimately, the Browns are showing us that Deonta Foreman should be a part of their game plan moving forward. I'd spend about 5% of my fab on him. I'm not going to go crazy because I think we need to see more consistency, but surely the window is open, right? There's a little gap in the door now. Let's see if Foreman can kind of bust through it. All right, the 8th player is if you need to stream a quarterback. Let's talk about Derek Carr. Look, Derek Carr is a fine streaming option. I got to give props where props are due. In week 1, he dominates the Carolina Panthers, and we're all like, okay, 3 touchdowns, but it was versus the Panthers. But in week 2, versus the Dallas Cowboys, look, he played well. 2 passing touchdowns. He did throw an interception, but it looks like the way this team is functioning, Derek Carr is a streamable option if you're struggling at the quarterback position. I'm not going to spend a bunch of fab on him, but I would spend 1 to 5% if you need, let's say you had Stafford and you just lost Puka, for example, and Cooper Kupp, then you can look towards a name like Derek Carr. At number 9, another running back that I think is fool's gold, Antonio Gibson. Look, I've seen enough Antonio Gibson as a Commanders fan to not be interested in him. I got to give him props. He had 96 yards on 11 attempts. He only had 1 target. I don't think this offense is going to be that good. I don't think that Antonio Gibson is going to be able to repeat that. So as much as I, used to love the guy, I think that this is a waste of a pickup if you want my honest opinion. And at number 10, I'd like to help you guys out with some streaming options for defense/special team this week. The Raiders are my number 1 pickup if you're streaming the defensive position. They face the Carolina Panthers, who are absolutely awful. They might be even worse than they were last year somehow. The Panthers giving up 13 points on average through 2 weeks to opposing defenses. And my other favorite option is the Buccaneers versus the Denver Broncos. The Broncos are giving up 12 points on average through 2 weeks to opposing defenses. So those are the 2 defenses that I would be looking to stream heading into week 3. And I'll finish off with some honorable mentions. Ty Chandler got a lot more work this week than we anticipated. Zach Ertz looks like a streamable tight end. It looks like Jaden Daniels is looking his way. Jalen Polk is definitely a stash for when Drake May comes back. He did get into the end zone last week. And then Jalen Naylor. If Jefferson misses time, Jalen Naylor might be the number 1 target in Minnesota. So I appreciate y'all for watching the video. Do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe if you like the content. Last thing I'll say is check out the pinned comment. If you have a question about waivers, start sits, trade questions, then use that pinned comment to ask us a question at any time. We will answer it through the Flock Fantasy website. So like I said, guys, a lot of injuries that we have to be on top of. As those updates come out, I will do my best to comment down below so you guys know exactly where I stand. And other than that, I appreciate you. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like the content, and we'll see you soon. All love. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, LAND, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.